So again, greetings, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to ASIP special webinar. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ousa Rin, a research officer at Angkor Social Innovation Park, and it's my honor to be the moderator of this evening special webinar. Before I move to our today's main agenda, please allow me to briefly introduce what is Angkor Social Innovation Park. So Angkor Social Innovation Park is a social enterprise affiliated with the Asian Vision Institute that aims to develop knowledge of social innovation and provide sustainable and innovative solutions to local Cambodian enterprises. So today's special webinar brings up to you the topic of rethinking urban spaces, innovating cities for people and the planet. And since we have seen that the global population continues to urbanize, urban living challenges have become more complicated. Those challenges can result in resource depletion, environmental degradation, and social inequalities, which pose significant threats to humans and the planet as a whole. So today's special webinar topic aims to delve deeper into the definition of innovation, explore the benefit of innovating cities, identify the challenges faced, and discuss lessons learned from successful urban innovation projects. Before we start our special webinar, please allow me to warmly welcome our honorable speakers. First, I would like to introduce Ms. Nadina Lacob. Ms. Nadina Lacob is a policy researcher and consultant driven by the desire to explore the potential of digital transformation and its implication across a variety of policy areas. Ms. Nadina Lacob has been working on European Union policy issues in a think tank, and she has consulted international and development organizations as well. So our next guest speaker is Mr. Jannata Giwangkara. Mr. Jannata Giwangkara is an energy and climate practitioner, and currently he serves as a senior project manager at Climate Work Center Monash Sustainable Development Institute. Mr. Mr. Jannata Giwangkara holds a master in energy, sustainability, and environment from the University of Auckland, and earned applied science degree in climatology from IPB University. Last but not least, our third speaker is Mr. Chhorravuth Chhort. Mr. Chhorravuth Chhort is a co-founder of Angkor Social Innovation Park, which is a social enterprise affiliated with the Asian Vision Institute. He is also a research think tank with the role of director and program manager. Mr. Chhorravuth Chhort holds a master degree in International Master Management, specializing in project management and social innovation at Odense Business School in France. He also graduated with a bachelor degree in business administration and management from the Itsumeikan Asia Pacific University in Japan. So on behalf of Angkor Social Innovation Park, I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation to all our guest speakers for spending your Saturday evening with us. So without further delay, I would like to invite Ms. Nadina to answer our first question. So since today's topic is about innovating cities for people and the planet, so could you please provide us with an overview of innovation and a factual example of innovative cities worldwide? Ms. Nadina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this introduction. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I think this question is quite broad, and we'll probably keep coming at it from different perspectives as we continue the discussion. But just to kick us off, let's think of innovation more broadly as a transformative process. And this transformative process can happen at different levels. It can happen within a company that innovates the way they provide services and develop products. It can happen within a community, building different structures, organizing the community in a different way for better outcomes for those within that community. And in our particular case, it can happen at the level of cities. And when we think about changes in such a big ecosystem as a city, we need to consider all the different stakeholders that might be involved, all the different sectors that make up that full ecosystem of a city. So to give examples of innovation at the city level, I would first perhaps point towards different areas in different ways in which we can think about innovation in a city. We can think about innovation in terms of mobility, how people get around from point A to point B within a city. We can think about how the government, the local government, provides services to those citizens. We can think about economic development, using new ideas and transforming local industries to be more productive and more efficient. And we can also think about social innovation and how citizens are engaged in processes in the city. So we know with this like framework in mind, a couple of examples that we can talk about when it comes to innovation would be in terms of the business side and the economic side of it. A good example would be innovation labs and innovation parks. Perhaps also Chhorravuth can talk more about the Angkor Social Innovation Park as well. But to just give some examples and going around the world for this. In Seoul, for instance, there is a social innovation park, actually not social, but just innovation park that brings together businesses, startups, young entrepreneurs, as well as the nonprofit sector to develop together new ideas. So this is an example of how can support innovative ideas by bringing together different stakeholders and letting them exchange ideas and try to create something new. There are also examples when we talk about social innovation in terms of how we engage citizens in participatory processes. There are examples of cities that are asking for ideas from citizens about how they could improve policymaking locally, and also how they could spend the money better. For instance, there are examples in Reykjavik in Iceland, examples in Madrid in Spain, for instance, and can go all around the world to see these happening. Perhaps I will stop here with the examples to give also a chance to others to intervene. But what I wanted to say is that we can think of this question from so many different angles. And there's a lot that we can learn from what other cities around the world have been doing.
Yes, thank you, Miss, for your innovative, informative sharing. I hope our audience find it helpful. So the same question goes to Mr. Jannata. So what do you think about the question that I asked earlier? So could you please provide us with an overview of innovation and a factual example of innovative city worldwide?
Thank you, Ousa, and also thanks for setting the very high bar quality of introduction, Nadina. So I can easily add on to what Nadina has been gratefully mentioned and examples. So I would like to start by also highlighting the challenges that the citizens of the cities itself. So not so if we focus on the people and also the planet. So the focus on the people, perhaps it's just like also currently happening in Jakarta, Indonesia, for instance. People or citizens of Jakarta is now facing the air pollutions. Also health issues due to the air pollution. So this kind of problem. So we need also to not only start from the government's perspective, but as Nadine also mentioned, how the government also as a policymakers could engage its citizens and also brings innovations in a way that not only works in a long-term level, but also solving some problems in the shortcoming issues like air pollution, for instance. So it's really critical to also see the challenges and not only in the short side, but also in the medium and also long-term perspective. So not addressing, so the innovation terms could also ties into the timeline or milestones. So it could be also not addressing the current challenge, but also could also address the upcoming, such as maybe in the next future. And I think it's also applicable for all impact for the climate change. For instance, urban heat island will be rising. So how the cities could also use the existing local wisdoms and also local knowledge that exists. For instance, Cambodia, I think in terms of the structure and also building structure, and how the cities being built and designed could cater or could tackle the challenges of the urban heat island, for instance. And then this is also, I would like to stress another maybe challenges that ties between the people and planet in terms of the water scarcities. So for instance, I look around some examples in terms of the planetary issues like in Cape Town, South Africa. So there has been challenged by the severe water scarcity, the freshwater scarcity issues. So the city implemented or encouraged everyone to do this water saving campaigns. Also tries to also advancing the desalination technology because it's a coastal city, and also engage community in a well, and also to navigate the water crisis by, for instance, opening some data and also maybe locations in terms of short-term solutions like giving the community-based water supply or something like that, or in terms of the energy and mobility, like already addressed by Nadina earlier. So in terms of energy, cities like Nairobi, which also being challenged by the access of the electricity, so they built city tech startups, and also in try to implement the financial inclusions and combine with the economic growth by having a so-called Silicon of Savannah. So this kind of examples also could scale up and also could be an inspiring success for other cities, especially in the emerging countries. So I'll stop here and maybe ask Chhorravuth, or also back to you, Ousa.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Jannata, for raising up such an informative example. So I would like to invite Mr. Chhorravuth to answer our second question. So by innovating cities, how can it benefit people and the planet as a whole?
Thank you, Ousa. Thank you so much for your introduction, and Nadina, thank you, and Jannata as well, like for bringing the good example of engagement between like citizen and also the government. I think this is how we can see the model that two different, the private and public sector working together, starting with the human activity. You know, if you're talking about the environment and also sustainability, we can see it's starting with the humans. So human, the one who make and everything come to the day like this, and what we need to do is about to repair, not to continue to do some action that need to be stopped. And for the benefit, I can see that when it comes to the innovating city, it's not just only like to change, but to transfer the what we have existing and to another level that we can meet the standard or make expectations of the living, you know, of the living standard of people nowadays. And as a developing country, along the way that we are developing, we are getting the new technology, we are conducting the new project, the new, new changings, but at the same time, we need to think about how it's going to affect in very long term. So the benefit is not just come about the people's life, that I'm talking about the improve the quality life, but then also about the economy itself. So we're talking about another point of view that we can see when the benefit of the innovating city come toward the people and the planet. We can see the economic will be grow, living with the resilient, and also avoid with many disaster like thing that happening like without protections. And a very last one is about the engagement between like the community. And we can see that Jannata, he also mentioned about the some of the system that built in Jakarta, also the new system from the Europe that we can learn from each other and how it implement and adapt, effectively. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chhorravuth, for your answer. So I would like to invite Mr. Nadina, whether you have anything to add on this question. So again, my question is, by innovating cities, how can it benefit people and the planet as a whole?
Probably the only other thing that I would add to this is, to put it into context and to say that For a lot of countries right now, of course, the urban population has already surpassed the rural population. But if we talk globally, there are projections from the UN that by 2050, we will have 2/3 of the world's population living in cities, which means a significant part of people will be living in urban areas. And at the same time, we will also be confronted with compounding issues such as climate change, perhaps other pandemics, and other emerging risks. And, you know, when we put these two things together, the only reasonable conclusion is that in order to ensure a livable and sustainable future, we need to do something about our cities. We need to innovate, and we need to think, how can we get to a resilient future? How can we make our cities sustainable, but also ready for any kind of risks that might come ahead? So that's just to put it into context. Other than that, I think I would also cover it quite well, and I would leave it at that.
Okay, thanks for adding on your opinion on this question. So now I would like to shift attention to look at the developing countries. So the next question I would like to ask Mr. Jannata. So what challenges do developing countries encounter in innovating their cities? Sorry, the floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, most of the challenges, I think it's already hints by Nadina earlier, such as the infrastructure and also resources. So how the city infrastructure could adequately provide some services and also capping capacity for its citizens. Not to mention the lack of maybe technical expertise in solving some of the emerging challenges, as the one challenge, for instance, will trigger another challenges like the pandemic, for instance. So during the pandemic, so we couldn't do usual mobility, could do usual economic activities. So this kind of challenges could trigger another risk. And yeah, it's around the infrastructure and resources perspective. So from also environmental issues, so current dependency on fossil fuel, and especially in emerging nations, because we need affordable energy and affordable electricity to power our economic engine. So this could also bring another issue. So I'll take also an example of Jakarta. So for instance, so the challenges is not only occur within the urban space or urban area, but also suburban or surrounding urban area. So in Jakarta itself, for instance, that there's not much, for instance, power plants from fossil, yet the surrounding areas around Jakarta contribute, and also surrounding manufacturing industries and transport as well. So most of the air quality issues comes from the particulate matter 2.5. So these come from this combustion of the not only transport, but also manufacturing industries, and so its associated activities that could influence the challenges into the urban itself. So we should also take a look not only as it is as a single system, but also an ecosystem that's surrounded by the other built ecosystems like suburb and also beyond that. So I would like to stress the challenges of collaborations, not only between or within the urban itself, but also involving key actors and also decision makers around the surrounding urban. So yeah, I'll stop here.
Thanks, Mr. Jannata, for your answer. So it is true that once we innovate cities, the challenges will arise. So since you have already explained and share your perspective on the challenges, so I would like to invite Mr. Chhorravuth to answer the next question, which is about the practical solution. So based on your perspective, what are the practical solutions for developing countries to tackle those issues they face while innovating their cities? The floor is yours, Mr. Chhorravuth.
Thank you. I think for this point, I also want to bring Nadina in, because he just published the paper about the leverage smart city tool. the tool of the smart city, right, in ASEAN and EU. But for what I have see in especially in developing country, we can see that the solution is come up with starting with educations. It's really important, because every time, like when we bring the vocab about what is sustainability, and if you're talking in Khmer, it's like JDP, what is JDP, something like that. So people like might not really know the full of the definition and the goal of having the sustainability, especially by rethinking it, by innovating the city. So because I have worked 2 years with my fellow here, 2 of them, and also we work about the sustainable development. They have introduced a lot about the smart village, starting from the beginning and after that smart city. And they have implemented the education system that is really important, starting with the new generation to know well about what is the benefit of having of that. And when it comes to solution, it will be another, perspective that we can learn as a developing country. We can learn from the EU country that they already developed for the some of the solution that is practical and it's really effective. I have one example that I went to a few of the visiting in Japan. They create the one of city called Eco Town. So that Eco Town, they talking about ecosystem. So like thank you, Jannata, for bringing the word ecosystem. So because everything is about recycle, repair, and refix. And it's not just only like for their people, but also they have a good connected with the the neighbor country to innovate the new products by existing products. So they try to make sure the product will be recycled, and also at the same time they need to make sure that the product will be used effectively. And everything, when we start, not just only like the product, but the way that they build the factory, they have the solar energy, the water, and also the pollution, that they need to make sure that when they build an eco town, it's not created. I mean, sometimes when we creating something new, it affects to the another part of you with the new pollution. But here they need to think that what it really best and how it's gonna be affected to the rest of the thing, even with the other corner. So as also you may know that in your country, that I remember that I have read the news talking about the country that they invest the factory in developing country. For example, like they build the factory here, and of course the pollution will be really high in those countries, so they need to pay tax. This is how the government can be engage themselves in terms of like punishment, or in terms of like make people feel like, okay, this is, you need to stop using that. And also, like when I was live in Nantes in France, I think I want a good example as well, because the time that they try to stop using the plane, try to use the train, which is a little bit expensive, but somehow that they try to reduce the pollution from the air. So I would not say that solution will be useful if we need to see like what the people accessible or not, adaptable or not, and is it flexible on that country or not. Yeah, but I really want to hear from Nadina, because she have mentioned a lot in the publication about the tool. So maybe hopefully she can share, because it's not a specific region, but it's both regions. So it's a really good answer for her from her. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chhorravuth, for your answer. So, Ms. Nadina, do you have anything to add on?
Yes, sure. Thank you also, Chhorravuth, for prompting me. So I'll add a couple of things to this, and I'll put it under the umbrella of knowledge sharing. And to link it also to the previous question about challenges. So, the biggest challenges that cities, and especially cities in developing countries, face is resource constraints. So simply they have, limited resources to implement big projects on innovation, limited money, and as Jannata also said, sometimes also limited experience. So, what can one reasonably do to deal with this? You might have the good intentions of saying, well, we need to improve the way our city works, we need to innovate, but without the money to do so, it's quite difficult. But this is where the knowledge sharing part comes in. It's partly what I also wrote about in a recent publication, and I'll get to it. Perhaps a good example to start explaining this knowledge, the role of knowledge sharing as a solution in this case is Let's take the recent example now of Montevideo in Uruguay. Montevideo right now is struggling with a huge water scarcity issue. There's been a severe drought in the past couple of weeks, which has led to people not having access essentially to drinkable water. Why I'm saying this is because Jannata mentioned a very interesting example earlier on about how Cape Town had a similar issue just in the past, and they implemented measures to avoid water scarcity in the future. So this is perhaps a place in which Montevideo could come together with Cape Town and say, well, what exactly did you do? How did you tackle your, water scarcity issue? What can we do? Is there any solution that you implemented that we could maybe, use as well? So this is why I'm saying that knowledge sharing is essential. And these are perhaps not the best examples in terms of developing countries, of course, but what I'm trying to say is that this kind of knowledge sharing can happen regardless of income level. It can happen at the high income level. It can happen also at the lower income levels as well between countries, and especially between as well, so that knowledge can be transferred for from those countries that might have had all the resources to implement solutions to those countries who might have not had the resources so far. And who would benefit from just simply having a packaged solution and then knowing how to implement it, perhaps with more limited budgets than initially needed. So that's one broad example at the level of big challenges that cities would face and how one could try to address them. At, let's say, more like smaller level interventions and more targeted interventions. I was mentioning earlier on that when we talk about innovation, we can also talk about social innovation and about getting citizens on board. There is this example of a platform in Madrid called Decide Madrid, so Decide Madrid, which essentially allows citizens to come online and to share any ideas they might have about how they would want the budget to be spent, what kind of policy initiatives could be implemented locally, and so on and so forth. And citizens vote on those initiatives, and the chosen initiatives from the citizens are then awarded a budget from the local budget, and the initiatives are then implemented. Now, why I'm mentioning this example is because the platform itself, so the how do you call it, the software behind it, that is all openly available online. And even the team behind Decide Madrid clearly states on the website that anyone who is interested in using this software solution and developing their own platform for their own city could simply use the code and also get in touch with the team behind the platform to talk about how they could implement that example in their own city. So this is, of course, much smaller scale compared to the water shortage example I gave earlier, but this is also another thing that can be done. And this is quite easy because it means that somebody first put quite a lot of money into developing the code, developing the platform, the thinking behind it. And then now that fully packaged product can be transferred to others, which means, lower costs, more scalability because you can just share it with others, and cost effectiveness in the end. So that's, I think, something that should be fostered in the future.
Thanks, Ms. Nadina, for your sharing. I myself, as a moderator today, I can learn a lot from everyone, from our guest speakers today. So I would like to shift everyone's attention to look at the role of education. So my question goes to Mr. Jannata. Could you please, my question is, what role can education and awareness campaigns play in fostering a culture of responsible urban living and sustainable consumption among residents in developing countries, cities? So the question is quite long.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting questions. I think it's important to also start or to think that to have a narration that education plays a big role. So I would maybe try to categorize or try to list the three, at least the biggest role of the education and also awareness campaign. So the first, of course, the knowledge disseminations and also informing choices. So as a great example and explained from by Nadina earlier, So this is by having this kind of collaborations between cities. So if you familiar about the sister cities, so it's kind of collaborations between cities around the world, from developing to developed countries, for instance, to exchange and also experience and also resources as well. And this could leapfrog the progress of this awareness and capacity building between those cities. So take the best examples and best practices from Madrid, for instance, and put it into Phnom Penh or Siem Reap context in terms of how the citizens could engage. So I think it's also a similar case in Jakarta. So the government of Jakarta built a platform called Jaki. It's a bidirectional platform that inform, for instance, if the citizens could find, for instance, damage infrastructure, road infrastructure damage, for instance, they could easily report to the government by using that apps. So it's a mobile apps, and it quickly solve the issues maybe within hours or maybe in the next day. Some of the respective agency could solve the problem. So this kind of educations and knowledge dissemination maybe could link to the sister cities initiatives. And second, also it would also change in terms of the citizens or residents behavior and also practice, because I think it's a most important driver as well. So for instance, those who already has some capacity to mobilize from point A to point B by using private vehicle, so he or she has a car or a motorcycle, but because of the educations and awareness, so he maybe if they or he or she could invite the neighboring friends or something like that, or along the way they could carpooling, for instance, or motorcycle pooling. So this could be happen by knowledge and also capacity. And the last maybe also the important is the engagement and collaboration. So by having the right amount of knowledge, shared knowledge, so everyone can also easily open their doors and open their mind to more engage and collaborate between all actors. So I think that's three key role of education and awareness building to foster the and also innovate the cities.
Thanks, Mr. Jannata. So regarding the role of education and awareness campaign, I would like to hear the perspective from Ms. Nadina. Do you want to add on, Ms.?
Sure, that was already a very comprehensive response from Jannata, so I'll focus just on one aspect of it, which I think shows how policymakers recently have understood that it's that education plays a very important role in ensuring the success of policies. And this brings me to the concept of behavioral nudges, if you've heard about them. So essentially, behavioral nudging is the realization that you can drive significant changes and support policymaking by making actually small changes into the behaviors of people. And this became quite prominent more than a decade ago in the UK, where they had a dedicated nudge unit only for this. So for trying to see how we can make small changes in people's behavior to make that would amount to quite significant impacts. And one thing that they did, for instance, in the UK, and I think that's been replicated afterwards in quite a few countries, I see it also myself, is on energy bills, for instance. In order to make people save energy or use energy and electricity more responsibly, every citizen would receive so from their electricity company the bill, and on the bill, of course, they had all the details about their what they needed to pay and how much energy they consumed, and electricity they consumed, and so on and so forth. But together with this information, they also had comparative information that said, oh, based on your energy consumption this year, it seems like you are consuming more than the average your average neighbor on your street. Here are some tips for you to reduce your energy consumption, which will also bring you a lower energy bill at the end of the day. And this, I see it also with myself. I also receive, when I receive bills from my energy company, they also give me tips. Oh, this is what you could do to, consume less gas, consume less this and this and that. And it can be quite effective. And this is just one example of what you can do. But I find the concept overall very interesting because you can apply it to a lot of different aspects. It's not just energy consumption. It can be the way you dispose of waste, for instance, or recycling. It can be how you consume food, making sure that you don't buy too much, and then end up throwing things away that you don't use. And to put this into a framework, when you think about nudging people, you can think about doing it in different ways, like a simple way like this one with the energy example that I just gave, that focuses on saving money. You tell someone, oh, here are some tips, and if you do these things, you would save money. There's also another thing that another way of phrasing it, which is in a more social, from a social angle. And you can say, for instance, if you reduce your energy consumption, that will greatly help us because overall we are facing a crisis and we don't have a lot of energy supply. And this is something that we have seen in Europe with the recent conflict, the war, the aggression of Russia and Ukraine, for instance, and the energy scarcity that led to in Western Europe, especially. So that was a message that we kept on hearing, think of reducing your energy consumption because there's not that much out there right now because we have, all this, the conflict raging on, and that impacts the energy supply. And the third thing that we can do, and I think that's becoming also more prominent now, is to have an environmental angle to it, to say, by saving on energy or by making more sustainable choices, you help protect the environment. Fewer trees are cut, and so on and so forth. So I think, by keeping in mind that there are so many different ways in which you can phrase and you can convince people to make small changes in their behavior, by keeping that in mind, I think that it can be a very powerful driver for successful policies. It's, of course, not the only thing, but in the end, it can be a very simple intervention, a very simple awareness campaign, perhaps, that together with the broader policy picture can amount to significant impacts.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Nadina, for your informative sharing, and I hope our audience find it useful and helpful. And also thanks to Mr. Jannata for dropping the website, the useful website for our audience as well. So due to time constraint, I would like to ask our last question. So this question goes to Mr. Chhorravuth. So my question is, what lessons can be learned from successful urban innovation projects in different parts of the world, and how can those lessons be adapted to various urban contexts, especially for developing countries? Mr. Chhorravuth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So what we have learned, the most important point that I will actually Nadina already covered about the many policy, and I think this is a good behavior, not just the citizen. Not just the company or the big group of the people, but it should be individually need to adapt their lifestyle. The way that you said, Nadina, I think is really good and useful. But for me, as I think the big lesson that we have learned and currently apply is about we try to go green and go digital. So, during the COVID-19 for 2 years, we have been working remotely and everything about the digital transformations. We can see there's really the cost that we need to pay. The best is the reduction, but at the same time, when we're talking about the medical thing, it's increasing. because we need to get the vaccine and everything and extra. So I think that the policy that about the go green and go digital like really play important point, especially to the company or the sector that should be applied, because one, they know about how they can go to green, and using the digital transformation I think is really good with the systematic, and as also the application app that Jannata mentioned in Jakarta, also one of the I think not just you, but I heard a lot from my Indonesia friend. They keep saying about this good system. It apply with a good application. I think in some country we also input and introduce more about the social innovation. We come up with this technology and also innovations. And another point is about when we're talking about the long-term vision, we can see that a lesson that we can learn about a very long-term sustainability in the futures by adapting and applying like all the ecosystem and energy, and especially with the environment that we have currently facing with an issue. And also my very last point, I would like mention about the public participations. So again, like we keep saying about the knowledge sharing, we keep saying about the engagement between the private and also, the private sector with the public sector, between the government with the citizen. So that all thing is about the public engagement together, public community, that everyone need to work together, cannot just one, but work together to seek for an advice, seek for a solution that can apply. And I believe the digital transformation, it will be the big help for them to introduce and promote about the awareness on the innovation about the city. And starting from the very small step, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, I said like we should have like smart village to learn, and then we're starting to develop to the smart city in the futures, and rethink about what your action and starting again, because the human activity is important. So please be aware of that thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chhorravuth, for your answer. So since this is the last question, I would like to hear from another two guest speakers as well. So Mr. Jannata, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, it's very great and comprehensive overview from Rafut. So I would like to add maybe the importance of by having these lessons learned and also exchanges between not only within the countries but also beyond the jurisdictions and also geographies, could also leapfrog the progress itself. So it could fast forward future in a way that it's already been happening maybe in Europe or US or anything else in the world, part of the world that has been working and also advancing and give so much benefit to its citizens. So this can be adapted and tailored to the local context and also landscapes that suits with the local culture, behavior, and etc. So this is, I think, a good thing that in terms of collaborations and networking. So we can learn from others what's the best practices and lessons learned. So others couldn't do the same way, the what you call rough way, or maybe the high emitting way that could avoid yeah. So basically, I would like to highlight again on the importance of leap forwarding the progress and also fast forwarding the future that could be happen somewhere in the near future. So that's I think my addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jannata. So I would like to hear from Ms. Nadina.
Thank you. I can only echo what has already been said, but just to add a couple of points to that, or perhaps just to rephrase some of the things that have been said. I think the main thing that can be learned from other lessons around the world is first the fact that it can be done, and I think that's an important part first. That's how you also package messages for others. If you're facing tough policy choices that the population might not accept, for instance, just telling them, look, this was done somewhere else, and there were good results there, so the solution could apply very well in our case as well. So let's at least give it a go, try to see how it works. I think that element of having a model to refer to can be a compelling case to be made for ensuring that the certain policy gets support from the local population. at the same time, by having this model, you can there are so many different ways in which you can tease out the benefits that can come from implementing innovative solutions. Depending on the specific cases, for instance, you can have fiscal benefits. For instance, you're better able to plan administrative work in the city, and by anticipating future risks early on, by adopting innovative solutions from other countries, you can cut down on potential spending later on. You know how it is, you prepare now in order to not have to repair everything later on when you realize, oh wait, I should have done something earlier on. This can also help, of course, residents as well, better, livability perhaps in a city, depending on what policies we're talking about, better mobility perhaps, and a host of other benefits. This is just to put it a bit in the context what I mean when I say, looking up to models and trying to get support for implementing innovative solutions based on lessons from other countries and cities. Perhaps another thing that I would add in terms of lessons would be, in a sense, also the inward-looking perspective, because I mentioned right at the beginning that when we talk about innovation, we talk about a transformative process and all the stakeholders that are involved in the transformative process. And a good way to look at it, and I think also Chhorravuth hinted at it with some examples that he gave from Japan, is the fact that innovation, doesn't come only from the local government or the government as a whole in itself, comes from all the different stakeholders that are involved. So innovation can also be taking the initiative and saying, well, I want to do something better for my city. I want to improve the way I'm doing business. I want to improve the way I behave as a citizen. I want to foster collaboration. So in terms of really lessons learned, probably the best lesson would be for local governments to also look inwardly and to see what is happening in the ecosystem. What can we also learn from, the stakeholders that we work with? Maybe we can already learn something from, the NGOs that are active in the city, the businesses that are active in the city, our citizens. And just to end with this, perhaps a good example is also the Angkor Social Innovation Park in itself, right? I mean, this is an innovative, collaborative effort that comes not from the government, but it comes from young people especially, and I think that's something that should be celebrated, and that's something that gives back to the community and should be acknowledged for that. So perhaps if you want to add any more points on your work there, that would be great. But that was just like one small takeaway that I wanted to share with everyone. So
thank you for your answer, and thank you everyone for your sharing as well. So after hearing all of your sharing and perspective, again, I myself, as a moderator today, I find this information very helpful and informative to my future research. So due to time constraint, I have to come to an end of today's special webinar. Once again, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our guest speaker for your remarkable and informative sharing in today's special webinar. However, I would like to invite all of you to have a photo together. So I will count from 1. Can we start? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Once again, thank you for being a part of today's special webinar, and thank you our audience for joining us as well. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Nana. Bye-bye. Have a good time there.
Bye. Yeah, have a good weekend.